Good morning, Virginia here with Jennie Lee Gems, and it is resin day again. And I have several little plates that I want to resin. These take a little bit of time, so I don't do them all the time, but when I do, I try to do 2 or 3 at a time, so they're ready to go. So I have a love of hummingbirds, and this is a vintage little soap dish that I got on eBay, or I can't remember. Now I found one with butterflies when I was looking for a purple butterfly, and I made that basket already. But here is a hummingbird that I've been wanting to make forever. Now, on the hunt for this one, I ended up finding this little guy. And he's done. He's ready to start making a basket of. I just can't decide which color I want to pop first. I'm thinking purple. But here's one that is completed. And today I'm going to try to show you how I encase the plate, protecting this vintage plate with a little bit of resin, while also creating a bottom that we can attach it to with pine needle baskets. So this one is really cute. I love this one. I was happy when I found it, but it took me a long time to get this. And there's a very big story behind it, but I won't tell you that now. So along with that, while I was searching for that one, I found this other hummingbird. And I'm going to work on that. It has the 3 little hummingbirds. And then I've also got these 2 that I'm trying to decide which one I'm going to do today. I'm really going for the purples today, I guess. So first, to prepare to do a little plate like this, or any little glass, or you can even do the same thing with stones. It's the same way that I do my stones when I'm doing little gemstones. Is first you find something that is going to fit around the plate sufficiently. Now these are old plates I've had forever, Corel, and I looked and looked in all my other stacks of items that I use for resining, and I couldn't find anything else that fit. So you want about a 1/2 inch at least on each side, and there's gonna be extra resin, but that's not a big deal. So if you haven't resined before, take a look at my preparation resin videos. That tells you all the stuff you need. So I am just talking about resining glass plates today, but you can find that information in some of my other videos. So again, find a plate that'll fit, or a little plastic dish, whatever you have that it'll fit in. And make sure there's about at least a 1/2 inch on each side, because you're going to cut this away later. So then you get your baking paper. I cover all of my tables and everything with baking paper. This is a special waist-high table that my husband made for me, so I don't have to bend over. So get your little plate, or whatever you're going to use for form. Cut out a piece of paper. Now I cut it round so you don't have those little stickies hanging out all over. And then I mold it. I mold it to the plate just by pressing it in. And I did this one last night, so it's kind of really conformed to the plate. Then I cut around it so you don't have stuff hanging around. I've made sure everything is clean and blown off. I blow off everything with my blow dryer so you don't get little fuzzes. I end up with fuzzes or a hair or whatever in there, and it drives me crazy. So anyway, get your little paper, get it all conformed, and get it set up. Now I've got my resin over there sitting for 15 minutes so it thickens up a bit, and I'll be right back. So meanwhile, while we are resining, I always have more than 1 or 2 projects, and I work with about 1 cup at a time. I have this left over from last time, and I ran out of resin, so I will add a light coat on that. And then I have this beautiful dragonfly. I don't know if you saw my other video when I was working on this, but I want to put another thin coat along his wings. So this has a white fluorescent underneath so that he shows up. He's brown, and he was floating in my niece's pool. And we fished him out, and he was already dead, of course, and I saved him. I just saved him. So I'll be right back. Let me get the resin, make sure it's ready to go, and I'll show you what we do next. Okay, so I'm back, and we are ready to resin this little plate. So first of all, Now see, this moves up a little bit, but when the weight of the resin and the plate gets in there, it's going to lower. So first of all, I pour a thin coat of resin on the bottom. So this resin has been sitting for a good 15 or 20 minutes. And it kind of clears up. If you let it sit, it gets quite a bit of the bubbles out too. There's still some bubbles in there, but see, you could see them forming. So just kind of check it, make sure it is going to fill the bottom. And you're gonna have to cut away resin, so you're gonna lose a little bit on it, but that's just the process I know how to do on here. So see, it is a little thicker because I did let it sit. It's moving a little slower, but that's fine. Just make sure you have a nice thin coat all over the bottom. I've got several other projects going too right now. I've got this, you can't really see it too good, but there's this, it's a beautiful purple in there, and I'm gonna put something on top of that. This is gonna go on the purple background. So if I'm doing a resin day, I do nothing but resin that day. Eat and resin. So then go ahead and blow that either, I'm gonna try to do it on low so it doesn't spread too thin. And just get those bubbles out. Now you're not gonna see this area too much. The bubbles aren't a big deal. So then I am going to set my little plate down in here. And I'm going to do it slowly because if you drop it real hard, sometimes you can get bubbles in the back. And you can fix that. You know, I have one today that I have to fix that a friend of mine, I'm a hummingbird freak, can you tell? So I made 4 of these. I picked up these centers in Mexico and then made 4 of these. But when I went to sell them, I noticed there was a bubble in the back. So I'm going to fix that. So if you do have bubbles in the back, don't worry. You can repair it just on your next resin day. So see, now that's stuck in there pretty good. I kind of just tap, try to see if there's any bubbles. It's really sticking good. So this resin is hardening up pretty quickly. It's rainy and cold outside, but it's nice and warm in here. So the resin's gonna work really well. Okay, so we are gonna get a little bit more on the bottom, so I'm not worried that it's not all the way to the edges here. I will just, as we add resin, you'll see that it will be filling up. So then here we go. We're just gonna pour some in the center, get it all around because we wanna protect these plates. They're pretty delicate and they're decoupaged actually on the back. And so when you buy them, especially vintage, sometimes there's scratches and it comes through. So I just cover that with a little bit of white paint in the back to make sure the color shows through perfectly and you can't see a hole in case someone hangs it up next to a window or something. If someone buys these and you hang it up next to a window, you're going to see through that little hole. Excuse me. So just spread it out really good. Make sure you've covered a little bit of resin just to protect it. Now, I could leave a lot in the center. On the first one, I ended up with a lot in the center, but it's clear and it doesn't matter. So I'm just making sure every area is covered and then pushing it over the sides. So it's going to refill the bottom a little bit as well. So now I always keep my little trusty toothpicks here. So if you see a little dark spot or a bubble you need to pop, then you can do that. Now, the resin's going to run right back down to the middle. And as it thickens, you can play with a little bit more. This is thickening quite rapidly because I let it sit a while. So it really warmed up. The thicker it is, it's going to, you know, cure quicker, warm up quicker. You could feel your jars getting warmer and warmer. So as this settles, the resin's going to redistribute around it. And all I really need is 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch on each side. This side isn't moving as much, but I'm sure it will. It'll be fine. If not, I'll just pour some down in there. So even though it's thicker on this side, it's going to move around and fill in over here. And if it doesn't, you could just force it. So this is going to be a 2-day process because I'm going to let it sit. Once I get it to where I want it, exactly how I want my resin, I will just leave it sit, cover it, leave it sit, let it cure. And then in about 8 hours, while it's still tacky, I'm going to take it and cut it out. And I'll show you that when I get to that point. Let me take you up closer so you could see what it looks like. Okay, I'll play with this a little bit. I want to make sure I've got a 1/2 inch on either side here and keep the bubbles out. I'll keep spraying it or heating it here and there. See, I see some nice bubbles coming. Sorry, that's loud. Boy, that really brings out the colors on this one. So I have a couple of these. I paid a lot of money for one of them because I just had to have it, and I just couldn't find it anywhere. But then right after I bought the first one, I found a second one. But anyway, I'm happy to have 2. So here we go. That's what it looks like. I'll make sure the resin is moving to either side so I get a good 1/2 inch because I have to cut it out of here. So I'll be back in about 8 hours and show you how we cut it out. Virginia here with Jennie Lee Gems. Okay, we're back working on this little glass bowl. I have 3 of them that I've resined today, but this is the only one that's ready to be cut. The others are going to have to sit a while. So you want it to be firm and a little tacky, but not gooey. The other 2 are still gooey, so they can't be handled. So take your little plate off of whatever form you're using. Now, I think I mentioned earlier that you need to oil your scissors. So have scissors that you're not using for anything else. These are just my craft scissors. I've got a couple pairs. And I've oiled them just with some vegetable oil. And that just helps it cut through. So all I want to do is cut around as close as I can to the bowl because I don't want a lot of resin hanging out there. Usually when I work on these, I put beads in here, but you can also coil right up next to it. So I try to open up the paper, pull it down, and the main reason for that is you get these little scragglers along here and you don't want them popping off and getting on the resin that you want to keep. So it's still very pliable. It's not totally dry. It's not 24 hours. So I'm just going to show you how it cuts through this pretty easily. It does take some strength. So first I go kind of a wide cut around and see, you could see, I'm going to hold this over here. You could see how the scissors get stuck. If there weren't this oil on them, they can really get stuck. And sometimes you'll hit parts that are pretty tacky, but so I just go around and I just need a 1/4 to 1/2 inch. And these are a little bit more difficult to drill because you have to kind of drill sideways. But if you have a totally flat bowl, you won't have that problem. It's just the way I like to do it. So see, because it's drying, but it's not. Now, if you have a lot of stuff sticking to your scissors, it means it's not ready yet. It's not done enough. Sometimes if you get to shallow areas, you know, if it's not even, they're going to dry differently. So I'll just set that aside. So see, I've cut just a circle around. Now I'm going to go back and trim it. And I want it to have about this much, like it looks like about 1/4 inch. If you want to get in closer and you can drill that close, feel free to do so. I'm just not comfortable with that. Same thing with my gemstones. When I'm doing gemstones, I'm very careful to leave enough because I know I can sand the resin if there's too much and it's dry, but it's kind of hard to put resin back in there if you don't keep enough to work with. So see, this is really done on this side. It's just clipping right off. So I'm gonna just go around the whole thing again and try to even it up, go a little slower. So this is the same way you could do large gemstones too, or small gemstones, whatever. So see, this is real sticky and it will stick to each other, so you don't want to get it back on top. And again, if you leave too much resin, you can always sand it down. So I just keep going around and make sure I have it how I want it. That looks pretty good. I'll just glance at it closer. So it looks a little shallower on this side. I might go around it just one more time. I do want to make sure. Now I've gotten some of these where they're just so sticky that it's hard to get it off. And in that case, I usually wait and just trim it after. That looks a little better. So this side over here looks quite a bit thicker. So I'm going to just trim some of that off. It's real windy out here today too, and I don't want to lose power till I could get these all trimmed because it's going to be kind of hard to get by candlelight. But the others just are not ready. I'll show you a picture. They're just kind of tacky. So this one looks pretty good now too. I think that looks pretty good. I can sand any edges that I don't like. I think that's pretty good because I usually have to drill sideways to get in there, and it's a bit difficult. So then tomorrow, we'll leave it sit, leave the paper on the back, leave the parchment paper till it's totally dry. I'll move this over to an area that's clean, let it sit, cover it again, and then tomorrow we'll just take the parchment paper off the back. Okay, let me set this aside on some clean paper. And I'll just show you how these, so I have my other two sitting aside. So here's the hydrangea. And it's just, see, it's just too tacky still. See how it's leaving my fingerprints on there? It shouldn't do that. And I can't find my little, here's a little rubber. So if you see, sticking to the bottom, must be some wet. So there's a good picture of this one's really pretty, but if you see how, oh, see, it's just still, it's too tacky still. It would just be a big old mess. So I'll leave that sit for another hour or so, and then it should be ready. And then I also have this cute little hummingbird. And he is a bit tacky still. See, it just kind of, yeah, he's not cooked at all. So he's gonna sit an hour or two too, and I'll just keep checking them about every other hour and see how they are doing. But that's how you cut them out. Make sure to oil your scissors good, and when it starts sticking, go to your second pair. I always have a second pair on hand. And try to fold your paper back away because you'll have little dots that have fallen off and they can fall and get stuck to the front of it. So it's kind of a careful process and it's a little time consuming, but the results come out beautiful. So thanks for watching. I'll show you tomorrow when we take off the backings and how they look. Okay, so I'm back and it's the next morning. Everything looks like it's dried really well. I am ready to start taking the paper off the back. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is this is the dollar store paper. So sometimes it sticks in areas and it's hard to get off. But, I mean, it works okay. See, if you can get a nice big hunk, it can peel off, but you get little places stuck like this. So you just find find where you can get your nail under and then just start peeling it. But the dollar store paper is a little bit thinner, but it works just fine. If you can get a nice big piece like that, go back and get these little pieces off. But sometimes you got to get your nail under there, get it going. This one did really well, but sometimes it'll stick in several places. So I'll be sanding these edges. So if there's a little bit stuck over here, it's not a big deal, but that came out pretty good. So I'll be sanding here and then drilling down in here, putting holes in so that I can attach a pine needle basket. And I think I'll start with beads, but I'm planning on using this purple. Look at these. Aren't they just gorgeous? I think they'll look really good with these. These hydrangeas are just gorgeous. They really pop. So I've started these so that I don't have to have you on camera too long. But this is how it peels off. Now, as I said, certain areas, if you can get a nice, it's so satisfying when you get a nice big piece pulled off like that. So this was the one that kept sticking to the bottom, and I don't know, there must have been extra piece of resin there. So you get the idea. So just work it through. Now, if you really have a stubborn area, you can put some water on it and loosen it up, and sometimes it'll come up easier that way. If you don't mind spending a little more on the parchment paper, if you get it from, say, Hobby Lobby or Michael's, they have the actual good baking paper, and I noticed it comes off a lot easier, but this is what I had, so this is what I used. So here's another little hummingbird, and I started it. And this one, oh, this one came off really good. So yeah, and this is the cheap paper. So that one's good. I'll have to work with these a little bit, but they came out beautiful. Now I'm just going to sand the sides, get them nice and smooth, because it's a little rough from cutting. I mean, you could leave it if you wanted because it's going to be covered up, but I like to sand them smooth and then I'll get them drilled. But first of all, I'll leave them set for 2 or 3 days and really dry perfectly. So a few others to open. I've got this. Oh, that popped out nice. So this is was a dragonfly that I found floating in the pool. I put some nice white underneath. So there's a few more. I patched up this guy. It had some bubbles in the back. One of my friends, Pam Wilson, bought 4 of these from me. So that's about it for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned how to do some little bowls, flat bowls, big bowls, whatever you'd like to try. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day.